I'm so excited to have Christine Fisher joining us today, who is Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of POSSIP. Thanks for being here today, Christine.
Thanks for having me.
And so just to kick us off, what has you feeling energized these days?
I think it's sort of the startup world of just getting to solve really fun problems. And there's no shortage of problems that we get to solve on a continuous basis.
Absolutely. I think for me, and actually you and I both live in the greater Boston area. I think for me, what's also energizing these days is just seeing that weather pattern, for the next several days. And it's like looking beautiful and warm and spring-like. And that's something that I'm kind of excited about as well.
It's funny because a big part of our team are in Nashville, and their kids are finishing school. They've been talking about it being summer for a few weeks now, and it has not felt that way in Boston. But I'm starting to see inklings of.
Yeah, yeah. It's so nice when that begins to turn and it gives us something extra to just sort of, be able to enjoy. So you and I met at TechCrunch a few weeks ago, and I can't remember if we were sitting at breakfast or maybe we just bumped into each other, but I was so fascinated by your story and by what you're working on. So tell us a little bit about what POSSIP is all about.
Yeah, POSSIP helps communities hear from each other, primarily school districts. So we send out rapid pulse check surveys through SMS and email, and then we consolidate all of that information back for school districts to really understand, what are our parent community saying right now? What is top of mind for them? What is our staff saying? How can we address and get ahead of some of the issues that might be in our community? So we serve about 1,500 schools across the country, and have heard from, over 1 million users over the years.
That's amazing. And I remember when we spoke about this, the ability to have that really easy connection to big communities is, as a parent and as someone who has two kids in high school, that immediately just seemed so valuable to me, because you're also taking the friction out of that process of communicating with your community and getting feedback from your community,
Yeah, it's
which is super
really,
cool.
the routine nature of it, being able to engage on a regular basis in a productive way. So, there's ways that we can share on Facebook groups that probably aren't so productive, and feed into a lot of the negativity that is around schools right now. I would say coming out of COVID, where we were really backing and supporting teachers and the community, there's been a bit of a shift in the dynamic. And I think there's a lot of tension often between schools and the parents. And if we just really make that bridge of getting communication between the two easier and more routine, I think we can solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, the opening the lines of communication is so important. And actually, it's interesting because in a completely different way, that's a lot of what I do with companies. Is a lot of what is at the root of misunderstanding and friction is the inability to really communicate constructively and effectively. So
And
it's great
share
that you have that
positive
tool.
too.
Yes.
You might call the school if something went wrong. You're very unlikely to call the school to just share that lesson plan on sharks last week really resonated with my 11-year-old. But our tool allows for that, and we see it in our data. About 80% of the comments we get about a teacher specifically are actually positive stories. And that's missing in our world right now too. Really focus on the negative, and being able to share positive between these groups is just such a joy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, how did you get involved in POSSIP? Because I understand that your founder started this and then you joined.
Yeah, so a really amazing founder, Shawnee Dowell, is our CEO, and she started it coming out of a dinner time conversation with her husband, who leads a network of schools. And they really determined that there was no systematic way for schools to engage with their parent community and for parents to engage back with the schools. and to get ahead of issues. So she started this product, piloted it, got it going, had grown it to about 30 schools and said, I think there's something here. I need to really turn this more into a business. And so she started to go out to her network and say, I'm looking for an operations leader, someone with kind of a diverse background who has a passion for schools. And at the time, I was looking for what was next for me. And I had left my big corporate job and was saying, I really want something that's closer to mission for me and closer to helping families and helping schools. And so a mutual connection, a former colleague of my founders and I were having lunch, and she said, I think you should meet Shawnee. And we met, and we've been on this journey together for the last 5 years.
That's amazing. What is it? What has been what's the transition been like for you, going from a big corporate experience now to something that's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum?
Yeah, so I worked for Procter & Gamble, one of the largest companies in the world, probably 100,000 employees. I was there for about 15 years in finance and strategy roles, and going to being employee number one was pretty shocking. But I absolutely love it. On day 3, I said, I think we need to change our pricing. And I put some slides together, and I only got through maybe the first slide. And then we had a conversation, and Shawnee and I said, okay, let's do it. And it was just such this shock of, at a big corporation, that would have been months of meetings, months of pre-work and analysis and back and forth, and maybe probably wouldn't have even ended up going anywhere. And so just that freedom to try things and to discover things is really exciting. On the other side, I really missed and still miss a network. At a big corporation, there's a dozen people doing the same job that you have, or a very similar job, or who have done it before, and being able to engage with a peer group who has real and relevant experience is something that's a lot harder to get in the startup world, because it's just you, and it can be lonely in that way.
Yeah. And so how is the experience different than what you imagined it would be?
I think that I thought that there would be a lot more risk involved personally. And while there obviously is risk, it's all manageable. And the stability, we've been going at it for over 5 years now, can be there even in a world where you don't have endless cash like a big company. There's other ways that you sort of are able to determination in a startup that it kind of negates some of that risk. I think I felt like it was just going to be so much more high stakes feeling each and every day. And maybe that's just our culture at POSSIP, but I don't have that feeling.
Tell me a little bit more about your culture.
Yeah, we focus a lot on it. We're a remote first company. About a third of our staff live in Nashville and go to a remote office some. But for the most part, we're all online. And we started that even before the pandemic. And obviously that kind of doubled down during it. But we're really focused on living what we serve. And so we use our own product at POSSIP. We survey our staff every other week. And we use those results. We review it at our leadership team meeting. But listening to our team is a big part of it. We have daily connects that we call our morning huddle. We kind of stole from the tech world with those stand-ups. And each team meets for 15 minutes every single day. And we start those conversations with what we call a whip around question. And that's a random question someone asks to the team, and everyone answers it. Everyone says, is there anything blocking them that we can help with, or anything urgent they need someone's attention on? And that forcing function of every day we will connect with each other in a meaningful way, in a maybe not directly connected to work way, has really brought us together as a team and allows us, even in this remote world, to understand who we are as humans.
That's awesome. I love that technique. And I remember actually you sharing that with me at TechCrunch. And I think that was actually the light bulb moment for me that, hey, I have to ask Christine to, come on this cast and have this conversation, because those are the kinds of innovative routines, and they're subtle, but the discipline of them and doing those day in and day out, that's what really starts to shape the culture of what you want to create, right? And that culture of connection and transparency and alignment. So I love that routine. That's definitely one that seems like a best practice.
Yeah, it's for sure part of our secret sauce. And I think it also helps people remember that we're all in this together, that, if you have something, if you need help, that you're getting together with a group of people every day where you can raise that and you can ask those questions.
So what has been your proudest moment so far as a co-founder?
I have a few. I would say bringing it to my home district in Cincinnati was a really exciting moment. Getting to see the parent community around me engaging with it was exciting and scary. That's also, really letting people see what you're offering, and knowing that not everybody's going to be a fan was sort of a both proud and scary moment for me. The other has been some of our fundraising milestones. Our founder, Shawnee, is the first Black woman in Tennessee to raise over $1 million of funding, and to be part of that story and be part of her success has been a really proud moment for me as well.
That's fantastic. So on the flip side, what has been your lowest moment so far?
It's hard to think of a single moment. I would say it is some of the grind that starts to come from constantly having to think about, where is our runway? How much longer do we have? Where is that next funding source going to be? And just really being constantly on that view of, we have to overtly manage this, and that it's not just some endless funds that comes from being at a big company. And that grind is just where I start to have my low moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that can be a big energy drain.
Absolutely. Especially because we have so many ideas and so many things we want to do and so many things we want to go tackle and solve. And I'd love for our energy to be there, and for us to have all the funds to hire the team to do the development work, to have that kind of endless resource bucket to be able to go and solve those things, versus solving, where is our next funding going to? If we could put our energy somewhere, gosh, I would love to be on the development side versus the fundraising side.
I think you bring up a very common challenge that companies at your stage face. Friction between, you have these ideas, you have this vision, and yet you also are dealing with a very practical reality. And there's only so much energy that you have. And so there's this piece of, you need to keep this company running and funded. And so you must put your attention there. But then you have to find some kind of percentage to put towards, how do we keep innovating? How do we keep putting some amount of energy and focus on the next feature or the next thing that's going to keep this sort of blossoming and scaling?
And it's that balance of, what do we have to do versus what do we want to do, and where do you get the focus of the team. We've also tried to, hold some of that between my co-founder and me versus spreading it through the whole team, so that we can have everyone else focused more on the growth and the development side versus us trying to focus on the fundraising side, and the sustaining side. And I think that balance has worked pretty well. But on the product side, we have those meetings and we say it's ruthless prioritization. The last one we had, we said we can pick one thing from this list of 20 that we're going to go do next. And just that exercise of saying, how do you choose? How do you focus on what's most important, and what aspect of most important are you basing that decision on?
Mm-hmm. How do you also, because this is another area that a lot of companies and companies really of all sizes debate, which is how much how much transparency really do you have with your whole team around all of the things that essentially keep you up at night? Funding being one of them. And so it sounds like you have determined that the most productive approach is for you and your co-founder to really focus on that, which enables the rest of the team to focus on the product and on creating. And so how has that been working for you?
Yeah. And I think I try to think of it as, what can people actually control or influence? And if it's something that they can't actually control or influence, then sharing some of the worries or the burden with them, it's really only self-serving, and it's not going to be productive or benefit the company. And so we do have to balance this motivational element of, if we're not meeting, our sales numbers, or if we're not meeting our development milestones, people need to understand that that does have an impact, and that, we are on tight schedules and tight funding lines, that if they miss those, it has an impact on the overall organization. But sharing some of the things that are outside of people's control feels like an exercise in futility. And that's just going to feed negativity amongst the team versus focusing on what is within their control. One thing we have struggled with is how, at startup stage, you're growing at such different and rapid rates. And there's some things that are, especially with school district contracts, pretty binary. Big elements can come and go. And so how do you set goals that are stretching yet achievable has been something, especially on the sales side, that has been a struggle for us, because you want people to be dreaming big, but you also want them to hit their goals. And so how do you come up with that balance for them is something that, and know just what is achievable at this stage has been a struggle.
Yeah. How have you ended up navigating that?
I think, it is a constant tension as well, because our CEO and myself really balance each other off of, I come from this finance background, more grounded in risk, more grounded in being conservative on the numbers. And she comes from just this sense of optimism and everything is possible. And so I think over the years, we've come to some happy medium of, we're going to set stretching goals that are also achievable versus, and we might have multiple numbers too. We might have one set of numbers that we base our runway projections on, and one set of numbers that we give the team to go and chase and to be successful against. I think that solution has helped us to kind of balance the various needs of the business, of being able to really set people motivational targets and understand, hey, but we might need to think of something different from a runway perspective.
Yeah. That, what you just described reminds me of the importance of healthy tension in co-founder partnerships and really in teams in general. That's sort of how I describe it. If everyone is in violent agreement, then there's something missing in a team dynamic, right?
Yes.
But if you can have this ability to disagree, have different opinions, and somehow find the right result or the right decision out of that, that to me is a sign of a great collaboration.
And it really is a partnership. It's very, very much like a marriage of, we bring different things to the table. We are not perfect. We both have our flaws. We both have things that we're really awesome at and things that we struggle at. And I think a big part of it that also gets missed in these partnerships is acceptance, is that, this is a whole person who comes with really awesome things and really things I wish could change for both me and for my co-founder. And I think one thing we've been pretty successful at is some universal acceptance of that aspect, that it is not going to be exactly the way we want in the other person all the time.
That's it's interesting because I just wrote a quick article on co-founder partnerships and how to set them up from the beginning to ensure that they stay sort of healthy and successful along the way. And I love that idea of acceptance as a foundational element of a partnership. Inevitably, and really, you want to be able to you want someone who is different from you, but with that difference can come challenges in understanding each other, because we understand best what we do ourselves. And so just approaching that with acceptance to me, just seems like a really great, foundational guide or rule for this. What would you say? So when you have these moments of, sort of tension, or when the stress is at its peak, what kind of advice would you give other co-founders for how to move through that together?
I think a few things. One is to be explicit about it and have some of those tough conversations. I think of over our history of where we've not been at our best together, and it's where we've started to let those things bother us but not say them. And then we've had, just really come together meetings where we let it out, and that's been healthy. And so when we can do that more continuously over time and not hold those all internally to let them build up, we've been healthier together. And then I would say that second piece of just more learning of the whole person, that there are things I'm not going to change about myself, and there are things that I'm not going to change about my co-founder. There's a bit of, yes, we can grow and understand and learn, but there's also pieces of us, that's what it is, right? And we're not going to fundamentally change who we are over time. And so it's learning that that's okay. And I'm never going to see that really evolve. And so I have to find a way to just move past it.
There's a lot of wisdom in that, because a lot of times I think when we're in these situations, these sort of high stakes, high stress, we can be pretty reactive, right? Like when we're in our style under stress, and we're in a sort of different place cognitively too, where we tend to be more reactive and responsive, as opposed to the better version of ourselves. And so what you share is I think really great advice for any founder or co-founder partnerships. If you're looking to have a strong and open kind of partnership, it takes acceptance of who you are. It takes acceptance of who the other person is, how you're able to adapt, and how you're not able to adapt. And that's okay, because we're all human beings.
Right.
And that's just the reality of it. So learning how to work with each other in that way is probably the most effective path forward. So just one last question. So as we think about, you shared some of the tougher moments of just kind of grinding it out on the financial side of things. How do you navigate through that? And what do you do to recharge?
I think it's I'm just going to tackle today what I can tackle today, and trying to put some of the future out of your mind, right? There's only so much you can do about things that will happen 6 months from now. And so much will change between now and 6 months from now. And it's what can I do today to get us towards that goal? But that's just really practical. And I do find that when I'm really in my stress moment, I go to my to-do list. And if I can just knock out, I'm going to just go and spend an hour paying invoices because I can do that. And it's rote and it's something that I can check off my list and do. And so thinking of those things of what can I be successful at right in this moment often helps me to not think about what am I not successful about or what potentially will I not be successful about 6 months from now. The other piece that I do is really balance my calendar. So we are having this conversation on a Monday, but I tend to keep my Mondays for my larger work. I've found that helps get away from some of the Sunday scaries of, oh gosh, looking at my calendar and I've got 10 meetings tomorrow. If I can look at my calendar Sunday night and say, great, I can start off my week really tackling some of the things I've got on my list and getting progress towards them without having a lot of distractions of other meetings and obligations. That has been a big stress relief for me to just set myself up really well for the rest of the week. I think often people try to block Fridays, but what I found was that by Friday, I'm tired. I'm not in a mental space that I can tackle some of my big things. And so putting more of my meetings on Friday where I can just engage with people and give my input and have some of those has been a better balance for me in a week organization than previous attempts at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find the same thing. That's what I do on my Mondays as well, is just carve out, particularly in the first half of the day. It's really my time to strategize the week ahead, to reflect a little bit on the week that just passed and, what did I accomplish? And then also what's happening for the week ahead, and just get myself in that mental frame of, executing. And then also what kind of opportunities do I really want to be taking most advantage of? So I totally agree. I think it's having that kind of mental space on a Monday just sort of helps to set up the week in a really nice way. And so lastly, so what do you do to kind of recharge? What sort of you enjoy doing?
I think things outside of work is important. And I would say one of my biggest joys of being at a startup is the flexibility, right? When I was in my big corporate job, you were there 8 to 5, 8 to 6. You were in the office more. You had that fixed schedule. Now, if I want to take an hour to volunteer my kid's school, I can do that. If I want to go for a walk after lunch, I can do that. And just having that personal flexibility is something that's really important to me. And music is what is my passion. So I play guitar and I sing. I recently moved to Boston. So trying to get more into the community here, I joined a choir, and that has really just been a joyful part of my week to be able to make sure every Monday night that I get myself to choir practice and I'm there with a community of other music lovers and we can share that together.
That's fantastic. And I can just tell on your face, like you just lit up when you started talking about the choir. So we all need those. We all need that kind of outlet, it's there's this like idea, that we all have just like a tank, right, of energy. And if all we're doing is taking away within the tank, with all the things that we're doing, particularly with the work that we do, and we're not replacing it with all of those, great experiences and great moments, then it's really difficult to kind of continue, especially in these situations when there's so much at stake. You're operating at a pretty intense pace, and being able to offset that with something that is that just sort of refuels you is fantastic. So
yeah, and what's been good about it too is I've historically played guitar and sang at open mics, but there's no commitment there. It's Wednesday night or it's Tuesday night and you can go or not go. And that's so easy to not go. and so easy to just stay home or just be with the kids, or, oh, I'm tired. But signing up for something that I'm part of a community and I kind of need to be there to be part of the community on a weekly basis has really more forced me into enjoying my hobby. And I think of how we can apply that in other situations of how do you really engage in the things that you want to be engaging in, by making some of that commitment and external pressure helps to sort of force me into enjoying my hobby.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but this has been such a great conversation. And it's been so nice to hear more about POSSIP and also just your journey in that. And I think that you've also shared a lot of really great wisdom that other people who are on this startup path can really take, and learn from. So thank you so much for that. And where can folks find you on social and otherwise?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn and you can find me there. OSIP is also very active on Instagram and Facebook, and you can see a lot of the content that we're putting out through those mediums as well.
Fantastic. And we'll put those in the show notes as well. So, well, thank you again. And yeah, we'll end it there.
All right. Thank you so much.